All right, hello everyone. I'm Sánchez, part of the PS effort. We are having this discussion this off to discuss projects to improve Debian. So feel free to, if you have questions, to ask them in IRC. We have a couple of team members in IRC. I'm also have the channel, so I can see questions there. Please feel free to go into the Etherpad for this talk and list your name there. It would be good if you had a record of everyone, in particular, going to make comments if we need to follow up with you. Okay, I see Chris is in the IRC and says he can hear me, so that's good. So let's go ahead and start. So Maya, I do see your comment. I emailed you and Anton the link if you feel like you need to share that with somebody. That I'll leave that up to you to handle this part of it here. All right. So first, the project we have. The team behind LTS and really the company that Debian developer Rafael Herzog started, Freeskin, to basically gather sponsorship for providing long-term support of Debian releases. For the first years, the focus of the work was on security updates, so patching CVEs in packages. And that, of course, is a critically important function in terms of getting the security vulnerabilities patched. But over time, it's become evident that we have several additional things that we are able to do, or I guess from an infrastructure perspective, that we can do that would provide a long-term benefit to Debian as a whole. So the idea is that Rafael has directed that some of the sponsors, the funding from sponsors, be set aside, and that it would be for the purpose of funding project-based work. So not just patching of CVEs, but specifically to address issues with improving infrastructure, tooling, and those sorts of matters, so that we are able to improve Debian as a whole. So this would not be limited just to LTS. This would be for Debian as a whole. All right, so that's kind of the overall goal and the objective. And the idea behind it was that by providing a mechanism where people, whether they be either the part of the regular contributors to LTS, or really anyone in the community, whether Debian developer or not, would be able to propose solutions to some of these type of ideas, infrastructure improvements, and so on. All right, I think I've talked enough about that. So if you can see at the top of the Etherpad, we have a couple of questions. So I've got for people to log their attendance. Be really helpful to know if you were aware of the Frisian project funding effort prior to this BOF. If you were or were not aware of it, if you could list your name in the appropriate section, that would be really helpful. And in particular, we certainly, if you can just take a moment, and if you were aware but have not submitted any project proposals, was there something specific that kept you from submitting a project proposal? That would be helpful for us to know, so that we can try to improve the process to make this more of an accessible thing. We recognize there are a lot of infrastructure needs and places where the Debian infrastructure can be. So we would really appreciate understanding ways that we can get these project ideas, get proposals, submit for these ideas, and get these projected so that we can improve the infrastructure and improve Debian as a whole. All right. And so for those of you, I'm following the BOF discussion outline in the Etherpad right here. So I've gone through, I've introduced and discussed the overall project funding initiative, its goals and objectives. I've gone through and, okay, I see Sam Hartman is posted in IRC. Sam, if you want to, you can just feel free to post in there. One of us will take care of moving your comments into the Etherpad. If the Etherpad is going to be difficult for you, I understand an accessibility perspective, it might pose some challenges. So then the idea I want to discuss quickly example, and might have not perhaps a good, well, what sorts of products are we talking about? We don't necessarily want to limit these projects strictly to LTS things. Certainly, it would be good if these things benefit.
I think you are muted. No, not yet. I can't hear. Yeah, you are muted yet.
All right, are you able to hear me now? Okay. Paulo, if you're talking, I don't hear you. I think you're muted.
Oh yes, I can hear you now.
You can. Okay. All right. Yeah, I had to log out, disconnect, and reconnect. I apologize for that.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. So, an example of a good project funding candidate would be point releases for LTS. And incidentally, I have turned off my video. I'm having some internet connectivity issues, and so I think the lag might have been partly because of that. So hopefully, audio only is all right. But the idea for project funding, as an example, would be LTS point releases. It's well known once a Debian release is released as stable, security updates are released as they are deemed appropriate by the security team. There are some releases that are minor in nature, and so these are batched together, and a point release is made periodically after every few months or something like that for a Debian stable release or an old stable release under the purview of the security team. LTS does not have this mechanism available because it requires work on the part of the team that produces installer images, CD images, and various things, and we did not want to place a burden of extra work upon them. So for LTS, we release many updates that are minor in nature that for a stable release, the security team would defer to a point release. So things that we might be able to do to improve the infrastructure to reduce the workload for the CD team and other teams associated with the point release process to allow us to implement point releases for LTS would be beneficial, because perhaps through that we would be able to reduce the number of updates. Some people in last year's LTS survey talked about there being just a very high frequency of updates. Again, because we don't have point releases available to us, we end up making security releases that are basically security updates for minor issues that ordinarily would go to a point release. And so there are various things associated with that. And so that would be a project that would require working on Debian infrastructure, improving infrastructure tools, processes that would allow then point releases for LTS, which would then provide a benefit to Debian as a whole. In particular, last year's LTS survey revealed that some users would prefer less of a distinction between regular Debian and LTS. And so by being able to produce point releases for Debian LTS, we would again be reducing that distinction. It would work a lot more like a regular stable Debian release. So again, that's just an example of something that has various tasks that need to be broken out of it, that need to be addressed, and that's not security work. We're not patching CVEs, but we're accomplishing tasks that would then have the end goal of improving the Debian infrastructure so that then we can create LTS point releases, and that would have the overall benefit of improving the Debian experience from a user-facing perspective. And so the goal here, we want, Frisian wants to use this funding that's been set aside for this for projects like this. Again, not just to enable LTS point releases. I'm using that as an example to sort of explain and demonstrate the objective, but there are many similar examples that we can discuss. But in particular, the purpose of this BOF was to sort of have some brainstorming to allow people to ask questions, make comments, make suggestions that would allow us to improve this process so that we get more proposals for more projects that we can begin to allocate funding towards to improve these in a way that is beneficial for Debian as a whole. Okay, so there is a comment, I'm not sure, from Laura. Yes, we have a project for that. I'm going to paste that to the IRC and then also to the Etherpad. So so right there we have the LTS extra tasks project. Some issues have already been identified. Now, some of those issues are very LTS specific, but many of them do involve things like improving the security tracker, improving the tooling and the collection of scripts that the security team uses to manage the security tracker. There are some well-known limitations to the current structure of this and architecture of the security tracker that the security team is working on addressing. But there are potentially aspects of those that can be broken off into an individual project that can be proposed. Are there any other comments or questions either in IRC or on the Etherpad? Oh, I see we've got several folks up at the top. Okay, so some of the comments that we're seeing Okay, what is it under the, if you were aware of the project funding initiative, what is it that has kept you from submitting a project proposal? One person put, have not come up with any ideas so far, but use Debian LTS as an old workspace and like that you're keeping it up for when I need it. So that's a good positive feedback. Laura says, no time. So have general ideas, couldn't find the time plus effort to define specific goals, tasks. So if that's something that we just need to generate more ideas, part of the goal, the objective with this BOF is to have some brainstorming. So please feel free to propose ideas, whether in the IRC or in the Etherpad. One person put, I cannot see how having funding would help. Most of the involvement I have in Debian and the projects I participate in have requested and got some hardware, but cannot, with good conscience, ask for money given my time commitments are so variable. So as far as that goes, these project proposals are intended to be a well-defined project. So this is not, I'm committing to spending 40 hours on this or 20 hours or 100 hours. I think an hours estimate will very likely form part of a lot of the proposals, but we do want to emphasize that these are project type of things with a set of criteria, requirements that are developed up front, and then a clear deliverable or end state that's achieved at the end of the project. So even if you have a variable time commitment, I would say this is probably a good thing to be thinking about proposing a project or one or more projects to address some of these needs. Yes, so one person put not being a DD or DM, absolutely that is not needed for this. A lot of the infrastructure work, even being a DD is, it might be beneficial in perhaps some degree of understanding, but things like changes to the security tracker, those things have to be merged and approved by the security team themselves. If we were making changes to the FTP infrastructure, the FTP team would have to be involved. So absolutely, this would be open to anyone, whether or not you are a Debian developer or Debian maintainer. Okay, not a Debian developer, maybe have some ideas, but not experienced, don't know how ideas will be taken for another Debian developer. Again, feel free to propose ideas, feel free to go through the ideas, the tickets that are in, for example, the LTS extra tasks project in Salsa, even just making comments, suggestions, or taking those and breaking them down into more specific tasks would be helpful. Okay, I think, is that Etienne? Yeah, Etienne says lack of idea for a specific project. Okay, and Rafael just posted in the IRC that the first project that we did have that was funded was implemented by someone who was not a Debian developer, but the review was performed by the security team because it did affect their infrastructure. Okay, and we have a question from Sam Hartman in IRC. Is the assumption that the person proposing the project is the one who does the work? Or could people propose ideas and a set of tasks, even if they would not be proposing to be funded to do the work themselves? So the direct answer to that is yes, the proposer and the implementer can be two different groups or two different entities. And in fact, one of the things that we envisioned early on was that we would have say someone from the security team might say, we would like this work done, and they would put together the requirements, propose those as a project that needs to be completed, and then those who are interested in actually implementing the work would take that outline of the requirements and then propose an implementation that meets those requirements, including all of the detailed design and any other things that might be required with that. So that was the original vision, was that those could be performed, those two things would be two different groups or two different people. All right. Okay. So let's see here. So we've got another comment from Thomas Lang. Says, I did a funding from the DPL for some website web team tasks. Even I'm a longtime DD and was unsure if my proposal was accepted and in which details I must explain my proposal. This was my biggest fear before I started. In Debian, it's also sometimes hard to know if a proposal would be accepted by other DD or team members. That is a valid concern. With this project funding initiative, we have some templates where we try to kind of create a structure where we guide the process of sketching out a project, the process of putting together the proposal. So the thing that we want to do there is to make it easy for teams within Debian to say, here is a task or a collection of tasks that if somebody could complete would be beneficial to our team or our effort or our whatever. And then for others to be able to come along and say, I'm interested in implementing that. This is my proposal for how I would implement that. So those are the two sides of what we are trying to accomplish with this project funding initiative. All right, so, okay. And I see a comment in IRC. For what it's worth, Thomas's request was approved on the Debian side. Yeah, I'm not familiar with everything that went on there, but yeah, that's something. Again, we want to try to make this sort of thing smoother, and so that's part of what we're trying to understand. What are the obstacles here? Another comment in the Etherpad. Says mostly, that's from Salvatore, mostly no time to be able to lead or supervise the project proposal. But from the security team perspective, we have a couple of wish list implementations for which the project could profit as a whole. And then he lists several Debian bug numbers, but mostly needs really time to properly implement / propose an idea and get the knowledge of the various infrastructure bits together, FTP master, DSA. Okay, and Jeremiah has indicated that he'd be willing to help with that coordination. All right. So that said, that appears to be all the comments that we've received so far via IRC and the Etherpad. We have about 20 minutes. Is that right, Paulo? About 20 minutes left in the session. Okay, I'm getting a head nod from him, yes. So are there any other specific questions, concerns? Again, if you lead a team in Debian or you're part of a team that has more work than you can accomplish, then it would be beneficial for you to think about maybe reaching out to see about getting some of those tasks maybe packaged up in a way that could become project ideas that somebody might be able to then come in and make a proposal to implement. And if you are interested in doing some of this work, then we do already have quite a few ideas in the Salsa project that I linked at the bottom of the Etherpad. And proposals against those projects, those are ideas that we have come up with over the course of the last year. Proposals for those projects would almost certainly be very well received.
I think on the pad there is a comment in green that I think you haven't read it, from Phil. Didn't he have anything rare? Can you see?
Oh yeah, from Phil. Yeah, didn't have anything where money would help. If I'd taken money to do the branch to repo open QA stuff, it would have made me miserable. That it took so long to bear any fruit. Oh yeah, Phil says go full screen on the pad. Let me do that. Hey, good idea, Phil. Thank you. Oh, I see. You're saying to go full screen in the session. Paulo, are you able to pull up the pad? I don't want to turn on my video and have it kill my connection.
Yeah. I'm dealing with the pad there. Let me.
Can everybody see it? Can you make that the video feed?
Okay, let me see.
Thanks. Okay, so Paulo's going to try to take care of that. My own internet connection is very poor today, so I suspect that that's going to cause a problem if I try to do that. So, yes, I understand Phil's comment relative to if you're being paid to do something and it takes a very, very, very long time for that to bear fruit, how that can be frustrating. So yeah, one thing that we would very much like is for the teams to make it a priority if they have ideas for things that need to be implemented, and if somebody's willing to do that work, to make sure to prioritize the management and review of that work. Salvatore's point is it's an excellent point that a lot of the challenge for some of these teams is they're already very busy, and setting aside the time to lead or manage or supervise these project proposals is difficult. So it is very much something where the teams need to balance getting the current work done with managing some of these potential project proposals for things that are for down the road. But anyhow, that said, there's very much a need for quite a few infrastructure related improvements and changes. And so we have this available, this mechanism. And again, we would like to get more ideas. We would like to smooth out this process, and we would like to make it a process and a mechanism that helps improve Debian overall. Okay, Phil made a comment in IRC. Being paid to do something that you do for fun has been proven in many sociology experiments to quite often kill enthusiasm. That is very very true. And so we certainly don't want to kill enthusiasms of people by introducing money into the equation if that's not going to be beneficial for them. At the same time, we do recognize that there are some tasks that just for lack of resources are not being accomplished, and this is one way to potentially leverage additional resources towards some of these tasks. All right. Are there any other comments, concerns, questions? Okay, so
there is a comment from
Raphael
on the
okay.
IRC.
All right, so hang on. So I don't see what everyone else is seeing on the Etherpad. All I see is Paulo's face, probably because I'm in a different Jitsi. So that's okay. So I'm sorry, Paulo, you were saying what question?
Hartmann did a comment there. Let me see.
Oh, in the
Also,
IRC?
Yeah. Starts also leading manager a project.
Yeah, also managing a project like this is a different set of skills. Figuring out a way to have accountability, but also a good working experience on both sides is hard. That is that is absolutely the case. So here again, what part of what we thought with this effort would be if the team has an idea, a general idea with perhaps some high level requirements. Part of that work can be someone proposing the project actually fleshing out those top level requirements into a detailed design. That said, the actual managing and leading of or supervising of the work is an important aspect of it, and these teams that we hope will begin to propose project ideas or indicate what things they could use help with will need to devote some of their time towards shepherding along or supervising some of these efforts. All right. See here in IRC, we have another comment. Let's see here. I looked up what the current process is, and it's literally email the DPL and convince them, which could be off-putting without knowing how many other people support your idea. Okay, so that I believe that's in reference to the specific to the overall Debian process versus to the specific project funding process. Okay, let's see here. Raphael said, I meant, what must we do? Okay, yeah, so Raphael, Raphael would like for me to draw attention to the next section in the Etherpad. The first section says, if you were aware of it, what's the main thing that has kept you from proposing? We do have some follow-up questions below that, and we would very much appreciate participant feedback so that we can get some perhaps specific actionable things that we can do to improve this process. So if it's a lack of understanding, again, the one comment in IRC, the process for getting funding from Debian as a project is email the DPL, convince the DPL. So the idea is that with this project funding initiative, we have some perhaps more specifics. And so now we want maybe some ways that we might be able to improve that more structured process. Again, we didn't want to make the process too heavy. We did not want to make it a significant hurdle that you have to get past just to submit a project proposal, but we want to introduce some structure into the process that would allow making this feel like a less threatening experience, kind of answer this question, so on and so forth. All right. Some additional comment from IRC. Sorry. So going back to that comment, and I apologize, I don't know everyone's name from their nick offhand, but okay, looked up the current process, literally emailed the DPL. The second part of that comment was, could be off-putting without knowing how many other people support your idea. We do have a project funding project in Salsa, and I guess Jeremiah can link that in the Etherpad. But that the idea is that those proposals can come in as issues or merge requests, I think is how we set it up. So that might be a good way to collect public feedback or support. If there are other people who you think might be supportive of this idea, let them know to leave their comments there, and that might be a good way to sort of gather an idea of if there's any additional support versus just having a one-on-one conversation with the DPL without having any idea of how many people would support a particular initiative. Now, that said, we expect that if a team proposed, like the security team put together a project proposal for some improvement to the security tracker, we expect that the security team, of course, would then be supportive of someone trying to accomplish that work. So hopefully that will also help with that aspect of it. All right, so then there was another comment, not sure if this kills enthusiasm, but in Debian, spending money for work was very controversial in the past. That's why many people may fear to start a proposal. That very well may be true, that in the past it has sparked some controversy. That said, I think the LTS model has shown that this works quite well. So we are, in the sense of paying people who are Debian developers and some who are even not Debian developers to do work on Debian through this kind of organized structure. And so there are additional improvements that can be made. I mean, the fact remains is that there's work that isn't getting done because there is more work than there are people available to do the work. So connecting people interested with doing some work with tasks that need to be done is seems to be a way that we might be able to help get some of the outstanding work completed. All right, what else do we have? So I see we have some folks in the Etherpad filling in answers or comments to those questions, so thank you for doing that. Let's see here. Okay, for what it's worth, this is from High Voltage. The nick seems familiar. I know someone who's a former DPL, I cannot think of the name, so I apologize. For what it's worth, all the requests to the DPL in the last 18 months were approved, and usually within 24 hours. So that's good to know. So sometimes it seems that we might just be afraid to ask. So we want to smooth that process out. And for some people, the fear of asking might just be, I don't even know what to ask for. So by this project proposal process, what we're hoping is somebody can look at this and say, oh, that's something that I'm interested in. I'm going to go ask for sponsorship to do this particular task or thing. Okay, so another comment for me, the talk of our DPL about spending money convinced me to do a proposal. Thanks to High Voltage for that. The main reason is that in this talk was to spend money for things we Debian developers do not have time for. So spend money for saving time. And fundamentally that would be, I think, a good overall approach or a good overall mentality is spend money to save time. In general, that would be a good thing. We do have funding available. So getting the funding into the hands of people who would be able to use that in a way that would allow them to accomplish work that we need done would be beneficial. All right. Okay, yeah, comment from High Voltage. We have two big sliders in Debian. Things either take time or money. Time is scarce, is a scarce, rare resource. Money we have plenty of and plenty coming in. So if we can do anything to swap money to save time, that's a very big and easy yes. And that's a great comment, so thank you very much. All right, so some of these answers to the questions in the Etherpad or comments from Luna, how do we make this effort more well known? Maybe linking it on the download pages for ISOs for older releases, or having an option for information/download for the LTS version when downloading them, and having talks like this, writing about it on social media. So that might be something following the conclusion of DebConf, perhaps write up something that the news team or the publicity team can publish as a micro news. There are perhaps some different things, so I appreciate that suggestion. That's a good idea. The next question was, how do we make the project proposal step more attractive? So this was one of our questions from us, the organizers or those behind this effort. A couple of comments that we have. I think maybe specifying the type of projects in amount of time, hours per week, number of weeks, similar to how it's done for Google Summer of Code or Outreachy, can help people to define their proposals. So yeah, if a team has something that they need done, we expect that they'll have at least a general idea of how much effort is required. So that would be beneficial to include that. If you are a team that is requesting work be done for you and you have a general sense of how much effort it should take, it would be good to capture that. Another comment also from Laura, within teams, maybe encourage team meeting to discuss this. Some teams where I participate don't have regular meetings. We just do the work when they can. It's difficult to know other team members' opinions about what to outsource or make a call to help. So yeah, that might be something that some of the teams, especially if they're facing a large backlog of work, perhaps putting a little bit of effort into identifying items from the backlog, perhaps there's some sort of collaborative team meeting or something like that to see about putting them into this project proposal process. And again, as Raphael commented in IRC, Frisian is paying Jeremiah now as a part-time coordinator, and so he would be available to potentially help get some of these things, ideas, into the appropriate form so that we can get them into this project proposal process so other folks can come and get a proposal put together to propose completing some of these tasks. All right, another question in IRC, how can we continue this discussion after the talk? Is there a meta IRC channel or just comments on the Salsa repo? And there's quite a few suggestions coming up. We do have a Debian LTS IRC channel, and we do have the Salsa project where you can create a new issue, comment on existing issues. So I do believe we have some different mechanisms for that. I'll also comment there's the Debian LTS mailing list, although we said this is not meant to be confined just to LTS specific matters. All of the people who are involved in this are on the LTS mailing list. And so that's a good way if you don't have any other way or know where else to get a hold of us to at least bring it up there, and then we can direct you to the appropriate, whether it be IRC channel mailing list or whatever. All right. Yeah. So okay. So the clarification, put another way, and since we only have a couple of minutes left, what's the best way to get in touch with you going forward? So I would say if you don't know where else, if you don't have a specific thing you've identified in Salsa where you want to make a specific comment about that, if you just have general questions or want to know where to get started, the Debian LTS IRC channel in OFTC or the Debian LTS at list.debian.org mailing list would both be a good way to get in touch with the right people who can then point you in the right direction. All right, so we have probably just a couple of minutes left, so I will ask if we have any last comments, any last questions. IRC
on the pad.
Oh, there's a new comment on the pad.
Yeah, sometimes for members in yellow.
What line number?
Let me see.
Oh, 70. Sometimes the core members also attend the newcomers. Yeah, that's from Lauda. I feel that we lack the part of the community that is in the middle between newcomers willing to help Debian and not knowing how, and core members that are overwhelmed. So maybe something we can think about from this perspective, we have a pretty effective front desk process in the LTS team for making sure that queries are addressed from newcomers, from people with questions on the mailing list, and making sure that the correct security work is getting done. So we might be able to take that pattern and maybe replicate it as a sort of project funding front desk, where this person or team helps to interface with the teams within Debian to figure out what they need and how to properly format those requests, and the newcomers and get them connected with and help guide them through the process of proposing the project. So perhaps, Jeremiah, that would be something that we can look at about maybe applying the front desk pattern to project funding. So Laura, thank you for that comment. All right, and I believe we are just about out of time. So thank you all very much for attending the talk and for your comments and for your feedback. We're going to take all of this back and we're going to try to improve this process and see if we can get some of these improvements implemented within Debian. Thank you all very much, and bye-bye.